Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says India's wrong policies have led to its expulsion from Iran's Chabahar project. In a statement, Qureshi said India is spoiling relations with its neighbors due to a fascist Hindutva mindset. Islamabad has also called on the UN Military Observer Group in India to ensure access of international observers to occupied Kashmir. The Taliban say they are ready to start intra-Afghan negotiations after the Muslim festival of Eid al-Adha, but they conditioned the talks with the release of all their prisoners as per the list provided to the Afghan government. In a tweet, a Taliban spokesman Suhail Shaheen said the group will also free the remaining government prisoners once Kabul meets their demand. Iran's death toll from the coronavirus has crossed 15,000 after the country recorded 221 more fatalities in the past 24 hours. Russia has reported nearly 6,000 new infections, pushing its national tally close to 800,000. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 32 people died overnight, increasing the tally to 5,709 with over 269,000 infections. Globally, the death toll from the virus has exceeded 624,000, but the number of cases are over 15.2 million. The United Kingdom and the European Union have failed to reach a post-Brexit trade agreement following the latest negotiations in London. Speaking after the talks, EU chief negotiator Michel Barnier said a new trade agreement is looking unlikely due to the UK's position on post-Brexit competition rules. His UK counterpart David Frost said considerable gaps remained in several areas, but a deal is still possible. And in football, English champions Liverpool beat Chelsea by 5-0 in an 8-goal thriller at Anfield to cap an entire league season unbeaten at home. Injured Liverpool captain Jordan Henderson lifted the EPL trophy in a closed ceremony after the match in front of an empty Kop. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says India's wrong policies have led to its expulsion from Iran's Chabahar project. In a statement, Qureshi said India is spoiling relations with its neighbors due to a fascist Hindutva mindset. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said he would brief UN General Assembly's President-elect Volkan Bozkir on Indian atrocities in Kashmir during his visit to Pakistan on Monday. He said the so-called impression of a shining India is over now owing to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's policies of hatred and bias. Qureshi said Pakistan took foreign journalists to the LOC where they interacted with the victims of India's ceasefire violations. India has committed over 1,700 ceasefire violations this year alone. Earlier, Foreign Office spokesperson called on the UN Military Observer Group in India to ensure access of international observers to occupied Kashmir. Aisha Farooqi said Delhi has been holding over 13 million people of the valley hostage for the past 353 days with its lockdown and communications blackout. She said India hasn't responded to Pakistan's offer for a third consular access to Ross-serving terrorist Commander Kulbhushan Yadav. The Nuclear Threat Initiative has ranked Pakistan as the most improved country in nuclear assets security, leaving India behind. In its 2020 Nuclear Security Index, the global monitor said Pakistan ranks 33rd, while India is at 38th place in terms of protection of nuclear facilities. The report says Pakistan improved by adopting new on-site physical protection and cybersecurity regulations. The NTI said Islamabad also improved insider threat protection. It said Pakistan's security and control measures score increased by 25 points due to actions taken to strengthen its regulations. Pakistan also improved in the global norms category. The monitor said Pakistan's score progress is the second largest improvement for regulations in the index since 2012. The NTI assesses countries' progress on nuclear security, highlights security gaps, and recommends factors for improvement. Pakistan's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ambassador Munir Akram, has been elected as the president of the UN Economic and Social Council for a year. This is the sixth time that Pakistan has been elected as the Council's president. Ambassador Akram has been elected to this post for the second time, having served as president in 2005. The 54-member council is the third principal organ of the UN, along with the General Assembly and the Security Council. In his acceptance speech, Ambassador Akram outlined the objectives of the Pakistan presidency. He said the UN member states face simultaneous challenges: the COVID-19 pandemic, health and economic crisis, and climate change. At least 16 people have been wounded in an explosion in Pakistan's northwestern province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Police say the blast was caused by an improvised explosive device fitted into a vegetable cart in a busy market of Parachinar. Parachinar is considered as one of the most sensitive tribal areas as it borders 3 Afghanistan provinces. It has witnessed scores of terrorist attacks during the last decade. Pakistan has reported 32 deaths from COVID-19 in the past 24 hours, raising the total to 5,709. The Health Ministry says 1,763 new cases were reported overnight as the tally crossed 269,000. The ministry said over 213,000 people have recovered from the virus so far. It said there are now over 50,000 active cases in the country, among which 1,382 are critically ill. Sindh is the worst hit province with over 115,000 infections, while Punjab has reported over 91,000 cases. In the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, the tally of cases is nearly 32,000, while there are over 11,000 infections in Balochistan. Brazil has reported record new cases of COVID-19 as over 67,000 tested positive, while Argentina recorded 5,782 cases. The United States continues to be the worst hit with more than 3.9 million cases with over 143,000 deaths. Globally, more than 622,000 people have died from the virus and over 15.1 million infected.
The surge in new coronavirus cases around the world has stalled the global push to reopen businesses to avoid economic catastrophe. The disease is setting new grim records in the US, Brazil, Mexico, and now Argentina and Peru. As the virus burns through Latin America like fire, China has offered $1 billion loan to the region's countries to help them buy vaccine when one becomes available. But WHO Program Executive Mike Ryan says the world needs to get over untimely excitement at vaccine news.
We have to be able to look ourselves in the eyes, and we have to be able to look at our communities and assure them that we have taken every precaution to make sure these vaccines are safe and effective before we go giving them to general populations. In order to make that happen, we can shorten that time, but realistically it's going to be the first part of next year before we start seeing people getting vaccinated.
Spain is re-emerging as Europe's hotspot for COVID-19, with the health ministry reporting over 9,000 new infections in the last week alone. The aggressive resurgence of the new coronavirus has now pushed South Korea and Australian economies into recession. Aussie's Treasury Minister says the road ahead is extremely challenging.
The impact of the coronavirus has led to a significant decline in tax receipts and a large increase in government payments. This has driven a dramatic change in the budget's position. These harsh numbers reflect the harsh reality we face. The economic outlook remains very uncertain.
China has reported 22 new cases, with 19 being domestically transmitted. South Korea's new daily virus cases are still hovering around 60 for the second straight day, as locally transmitted cases spike due to cluster infections.
Iran has recorded 221 more fatalities from the coronavirus over the past 24 hours, bringing the nationwide death toll to over 15,000. The health ministry said over 2,600 people have been tested positive for the virus, raising the total to over 284,000. Health ministry spokeswoman Sima Sadat Al-Lari says over 247,000 people have recovered, while more than 3,600 patients remain in critical condition. She added that so far over 2.25 million tests have been carried out in Iran. Iran says foreign states might have carried out cyber attacks on its facilities. Talking to media in Tehran, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Abbas Musavi said cyber attacks on the country are not a new thing. Musavi said forensic analyses have identified the groups or the governments behind these attacks. He said unless proven otherwise, the US would be the primary suspect for any cyber attack. The spokesperson said fires in forests, refineries and other locations have nothing to do with it and are common in summer. The Taliban say they are ready to start inter-Afghan negotiations after the Islamic festival of Eid al-Adha, but they conditioned the talks with the release of all their prisoners as per the list provided to the Kabul administration. In a tweet, Taliban's spokesman Sohail Shaheen said the group will also free the remaining government prisoners once Kabul meets their demand. The Afghan government has so far released over 4,000 Taliban in exchange for hundreds of security personnel under the Doha peace deal. The pact requires the both sides to free a total of 6,000 prisoners. The US says it is deeply concerned over an escalation in violence and civilian casualties in Afghanistan. Special Envoy for Afghanistan, Zalmay Khalilzad, urged Kabul and the Taliban to show necessary restraint ahead of intra-Afghan negotiations. Khalilzad said Washington condemns Afghan government airstrikes in eastern Herat province, as well as the Taliban's recent raids. This comes as 45 people, including civilians and Taliban fighters, were killed in government airstrike in Herat province. Tensions between Kabul and the fighters are on the rise again, with both of them targeting each other's posts. China has lashed out at a new UK policy allowing Hong Kong residents to claim British citizenship. In a statement, Beijing's embassy in London says the policy violates international law and interferes with China's internal affairs. The embassy said Beijing will issue a stern response if London did not reverse its decision. It said the Chinese side urges the British side to recognize the reality that Hong Kong has returned to China. Beijing said London should objectively evaluate Hong Kong's national security law and immediately correct its mistakes. Earlier, British Interior Minister Priti Patel said Hong Kong people with British national overseas status will be able to apply for special visa to live in the UK. This could eventually lead towards citizenship starting from January 2021. China has urged the US to immediately stop slandering Beijing under the pretext of cybersecurity. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said Beijing firmly opposes all forms of cybercrimes. Wang said Washington has been conducting cybercrime around the world under the guise of its security programs like PRISM. He said Washington's accusations of cyber aggression tantamounts to a thief crying foul. The spokesperson said the activities of US-backed hackers can easily trigger strategic misunderstandings, which may result in serious consequences. The US says it can still collaborate with China to tackle North Korea's development of weapons of mass destruction. US Deputy Secretary of State Stephen Biegun said Pyongyang's weapons program undermined both countries' shared strategic interests in the region. Biegun said China prefers the diplomatic approach to resolve the denuclearization issue to achieve in peace and stability on the Korean peninsula. He said Beijing has already reduced trade with Pyongyang, but it can do more by enforcing binding sanctions to curtail Pyongyang's threat. The diplomat said despite ongoing bilateral tensions, Washington will continue to engage with Beijing over the issue. It's time for a short break. I will be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Britain and the European Union have clashed over the chances of securing a free trade agreement. Brussels deemed the deal unlikely, but London pinned its hopes for a deal to be reached in September.
Speaking after the talks, UK's chief negotiator David Frost said the country will work energetically to reach an agreement with the bloc. He said they must prepare for every outcome and it is possible that they would not reach an agreement. Whereas EU negotiator Michel Barnier said both the sides are still far away and time is running out for negotiations. He said a deal was unlikely at this point unless London changed its stance over fisheries and probe and post-Brexit rules on competition. The UK has ruled out extending the December deadline to reach a deal. This was the second official round of talks to be held since the coronavirus crisis after both sides agreed to intensify talks in June.
European Union lawmakers are holding a special session to discuss and ratify a $2 trillion coronavirus aid and budget package. The deal was agreed on Tuesday by the EU leaders following 4 days of heated debates. The deal is aimed at helping hard-hit bloc nations recover from the economic fallout of the novel coronavirus pandemic. Lawmakers are expected to make amendments to the deal ahead of the vote. Parliament is revisiting proposed cuts in the areas of research, environment and migration. The package includes a €750 billion fund that will be given to countries in the form of loans and grants. France's President Emmanuel Macron has asked the EU to impose sanctions on Turkey for violations of Greek and Cypriot waters. He said the European Union should act over the crisis in Libya. Speaking alongside his Cypriot counterpart in Paris, Macron said France stands behind Cyprus and Greece amid Turkish violations of their sovereignty. He said it would be a serious mistake for the EU to not respond to such breaches. The French president said sanctions are necessary to have a ceasefire and a step towards a political solution to the Libyan conflict. Turkey and Greece are at loggerheads over claims for natural gas reserves, bringing forward Cyprus to explore for gas amid strong Ankara's objections. Berlin says Washington's threat of withdrawing 9,500 troops from Germany is a cause for NATO concern. Defense Minister Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer said the move will not damage US-German relations but could fracture the alliance. Kramp-Karrenbauer said the withdrawal of the forces will be seen as a major change in American strategy. Last month, US President Donald Trump approved the withdrawal of more than a quarter of its troops from Germany. Trump took the step after accusing Berlin of not contributing 2% of GDP to NATO's defense budget as mandated by a 2014 agreement. Ukrainian forces and the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic have reached a ceasefire agreement on the eastern border region of Donbass. After a virtual meeting of the Trilateral Contact Group, the DPR's foreign ministry said corresponding orders will come into force on July the 27th. The DPR also said all parties have agreed to ban the use of drones and positioning of heavy weapons in built-up areas to protect civilians. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has hailed the pact, calling it the fruit of rigorous negotiations. The conflict between Ukrainian troops and Russian-backed rebels in Donetsk and Luhansk has killed over 13,000 people since 2015. In Ukraine, a man armed with a grenade has taken a senior policeman hostage in the central city of Poltava. Negotiations are ongoing to force the attacker to surrender to the police. The man pulled out a grenade and threatened to kill police as officers went to arrest him for allegedly hijacking a vehicle. Ukraine's Deputy Interior Minister says negotiations are underway to force the attacker to surrender without harming himself or others. This is the second event in Ukraine in 3 days after a man armed with explosives took over a bus in holding the passengers hostage. US President Donald Trump has announced a plan to send federal agents to more cities to crack down on violent crime. At a White House event, Trump said he has expanded the Operation Legend to Chicago Albuquerque and New Mexico. The program mandates deploying federal agents to assist local police in combating what the Justice Department says is a surge of violent crime. Democratic officials in Chicago and New Mexico have welcomed the move, but voiced concerns about a possible repeat of the crackdown seen in Portland. Trump said the measure will end the bloodshed. He urged Americans to hold the radical left accountable, saying there is simply no substitute for the police.
My administration will be working to remove dangerous offenders sprung loose by these deadly policies and, frankly, by these deadly politicians. America must be a sanctuary for law-abiding citizens, not criminal aliens. My vision for America's cities could not be more different from the lawlessness being pushed by the extreme radical left. While others want to defund, defame, and abolish the police, I want to support and honor our great police.
Israel says it is boosting the number of troops along its northern borders, hinting at a possible escalation in Syria or Lebanon. The Israeli military says the decision was made after a recent situational assessment. The military did not provide any further details regarding the development. The decision follows heightened tensions after the killing of a Hezbollah fighter in an Israeli airstrike. Syrian officials say 7 soldiers were wounded in the air raid on Damascus late on Monday night. Israel also closed the airspace over the occupied Golan Heights on Tuesday. Boko Haram militants have killed 5 aid workers in Nigeria's northeastern state of Borno. In a statement, the human rights group Action Against Hunger said the militants had abducted the workers on 8th of June. Boko Haram circulated the video of the execution-style shooting on social media. In the footage, they warned locals against working for the foreigners, who they describe as infidels. Boko Haram has been leading violent warfare, targeting civilians for more than a decade in the region. 5 African leaders have arrived in Mali to negotiate an end to the political crisis following weeks of protests demanding the president's resignation. In a rare joint visit, the presidents of Senegal, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Nigeria and Niger will meet Malian President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. Opposition leaders have rejected an earlier solution proposed by mediators from the 15-nation West African bloc. The plan called for Keïta to form a unity government and share power, but the opposition leaders rejected it. Keïta has been locked for weeks in a standoff with the June 5 movement that spiraled into violent clashes, leaving 11 people dead. The movement turned into public anger over the president's failure to tackle dire economy, corruption, and an 8-year militant conflict. Saudi Arabia's King Salman bin Abdulaziz has undergone a successful operation to remove his gallbladder. The state media reported that the monarch will stay in hospital for some time to receive treatment. The 84-year-old monarch was admitted to hospital with an inflammation of the gallbladder on Sunday. On Tuesday, Saudi King Salman held a cabinet meeting via video call from hospital in capital Riyadh. A wildfire in southern Greece has forced large-scale evacuations, burning houses and acres of forest land. Fire brigades said over 200 firefighters, along with 54 vehicles and 6 helicopters and 4 aircraft, are battling the blaze in Kichay's Gornet. Fire brigades evacuated the Akitia village and a nearby boarding school, as well as several other residential areas. Local media reported that 5 other fires continue to burn in the south of Greece and other parts of the country. No casualties have been reported so far. China has successfully launched an unmanned probe to Mars in its first independent mission to another planet. China's Long March 5x4 carrier rocket blasted off with the probe from Wancheng Space Launch Center on the southern island of Hainan. The probe is expected to reach Mars in February, when it will attempt to deploy a rover to explore the planet for 90 days. Beijing says the probe carries several scientific instruments to observe the planet's atmosphere and surface, searching for signs of water and ice. Christian Dior hosted a live audience-free fashion show in Italy's Lecce. On display was a dazzling celebration of folklore and a tabloid piece. Let's find out more about this unique show in this report.
DIOR upped the ante by staging an extravaganza with a live orchestra, opera and dancers performing a modern take on a traditional tune. The French brand arranged a cruise show to present its 2020 fall collection, celebrating the local crafts and traditions of Lecce City. Straddling across a gallery of lights, nestled amongst rich historic architecture and pivoted at the Dome of Harmony, the show was mesmerizing.
Je voulais avoir un œil très positif.
I wanted to have a very positive view, a bright view on things. Inspiration can't come from this COVID when it comes to my way of working. And so we went with an explosion of color, of shapes, of luxury.
Since coronavirus pandemic took the world hostage, the fashion world has come to a standstill. Big names are now organizing virtual shows to send positive energy and to tell the world that they are back in action.
So I say I want to find tombolo. Tombolo is very incredible craftsmanship, is very rare. So I found these women that I went in November. I say I would like to realize only one piece because I know that is long, please, but I would like to celebrate this technique.
This fashion show was a very personal project for creative chief Maria Grazia Chiuri. The theme of the show took her back to her childhood in Puglia. Chiuri says she sought to showcase the craftsmanship of Puglia region and help it endure by casting it in a fresh light.
In Cuba, girls are turning face masks into a fashion accessory for their 15th birthday photo shoots to match their party outfits. More in this report.
As Cuba eases its lockdown restrictions, face masks are now becoming part of their quinceañera celebrations. The event is common throughout Latin America and includes photo shoots with many glamorous ensembles. A birthday girl, Sofia Valenzuela, said she had to design her masks according to her outfits.
I designed my 15th and the mask was very important because it marked an important stage in my life, which was the pandemic, which lasted 3 months. So I had to design my face mask to fit with my outfit and for all the colors to work. Apart from combining the colors, it was also for security.
In one of her photo shoots, she poses in front of a Havana wall, covered in colorful graffiti, wearing a black top, black and white checkered mini skirt and a matching face mask. Valenzuela has done some of her shoots without a mask and others with, especially in urban areas. While her seamstress says she had to interlace black and white stripes to create material for the cloth mask.
This has been tremendous because I really don't have the fabric, and with the situation of the stores being closed, I can't go to the store to see if I can find it. So I had to innovate. I had to start doing the imitation of the fabric of what the girls celebrating her quinceañera wants, because the girls have to be pleased on their 15th. It is the only time they turn 15. They never turn 15 again, so they have to be pleased.
While face masks have proven polemic in some countries, Cuba made them mandatory in public spaces early on, crediting them with containing the spread of COVID-19, while the country has registered no new case since Monday.
More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. China's telecom company Huawei has asked a U.S. judge for access to evidence that prosecutors say is too sensitive to be shared. In a letter to the federal court, Huawei's lawyer Thomas Green said the government is yet to offer a reasonable justification for the allegations. Prosecutors have classified 21,000 pages of sensitive material to avoid the information falling into Beijing's hands. The smartphone maker is charged with violating the U.S. sanctions against Iran, and the legal fight over the evidence has been ongoing for a year. The company and its chief financial officer, Meng Wanzhou, have been fighting additional racketeering charges regarding intellectual property theft. South Korea has fallen into recession as its gross domestic product contracted by 2.9% in the second quarter, the steepest decline since 1998. Central bank data released today shows the pandemic hammered outbound shipments and private spending. Exports, which account for nearly 40% of the economy, fell by 16.6% on quarter to mark the worst reading since 1963. The Bank of Korea is set to offer a revised growth outlook for the year on August the 27th. Wall Street's main indexes are trading lower after data showed more Americans are filing for unemployment compared to last week. The data also suggested a recovery in the labor market was stalling. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is trading lower by about 0.25%, while the S&P 500 is also trading marginally lower. The Nasdaq Composite Index has shed about a fraction. Meanwhile, oil prices moved lower after a sunrise increase in the U.S. crude oil reserves. In football, English champions Liverpool beat Chelsea by 5-3 at Anfield to cap an entire league season undefeated at home. Injured Liverpool captain Jordan Henderson lifted the EPL trophy in a close ceremony after the match in front of an empty Kop. Reds raced into a 3-0 lead via goals from Naby Keita, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Georginio Wijnaldum before Olivier Giroud pulled one back. Roberto Firmino restored the 3-goal cushion, but the victors rode back through Tammy Abraham and Christian Pulisic. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain's strike 6 minutes from time put the result beyond any doubt as the champions moved on to 96 points. Chelsea now need a point against Wolverhampton Wanderers in their fixture to qualify next season's Champions League. Inter Milan were held to a scoreless draw by Fiorentina at the San Siro as leaders Juventus moved closer to a 9th successive Serie A title. The result means that Juventus can clinch the title by winning at Udinese later today. Both Inter and Atalanta have 3 games each to play, and the Old Lady holds a better head-to-head record as well as a game in hand. Visiting goalkeeper Pietro Trianciano was in supreme form, while the Nerazzurri twice hit the post through Romelu Lukaku and Alexis Sanchez. In another game, AS Roma thumped the relegated Spal by 6-1 at Paolo Mazza to move back into Europa League spot. Elsewhere, Genoa beat Sampdoria by 3-1 and Brescia were relegated after a loss to Lecce by the same score, while Torino drew 1-1 versus Hella Verona. In cricket, England's fast bowler Jofra Archer has been included in the squad for the declining 3rd test against West Indies. The 25-year-old was dropped from the 2nd test for breaching the COVID-19 biosecure protocols. The measures were put in place by the England and Wales Cricket Board to shield players from coronavirus. Archer's breach of the protocols came to the light the night before the match was due to begin. James Anderson and Mark Wood are also included in the 14-man squad for Friday's match. With the 3-test series poised at 1-1, West Indies have the opportunity for a historic first win in England since 1988. England are looking to reclaim the Wisden Trophy and defend a 6-year unbeaten home record. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.